Thank you for joining us on our journey here to preserve the history of mixed martial arts. When I wanted to take on this project, I needed help. I brought in one of my favorite matchmakers, Miguel Iturrate, and the MMA detective, Mike Davis. So to do this, we've been able to preserve history. Welcome and enjoy.
Miguel Iturrate back here on the Lights Out podcast. I got the MMA detective, Mike Davis, and we are off on another deep dive. We have been joined by 50 Fight Club member and a lot more than that, Melvin Guillard, the young assassin. Melvin, how are you?
I'm doing good, guys. How you guys doing, man?
Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to turn it over to the MMA detective here. He's got you scouted out here.
So, Melvin, your career path is like insane. Like, does that register to you?
Yeah, it does. I mean, it always have. I mean, that was my intention, get as many fights in as possible before it's over. I mean, I started this career as a pro at 16 years old. Just had a fight club in New Orleans, well, Metairie, called it the Main Event. So, yeah, I mean, it's my childhood dream. It's been ever since I saw the first UFC fight, UFC 1 in '93. I wanted to be an MMA fighter. So, yeah, I mean, it's all intentional. I mean, that's why I'm still fighting at the age of 39.
You wrestled in high school. What age did you start at?
I started at 12. I started wrestling at my middle school, which was John Quincy Adams, but they didn't have a wrestling team. So I wrestled at my high school, Bonneville High School, where I won my state tournament. I wrestled for them for 8 years instead of 4.
Okay, so you won Louisiana State Championship 2 times. Am I correct?
Once, 2002.
All right. What happened in 2001?
2001, I placed third.
Third. Okay, that's what I thought. All right. You fought like an large amount of time on the independent grind before getting to the UFC.
Right.
Did you start, and you wrestled 1 year at Colby College, correct?
Right.
And then you hook up with Joe Ancona?
Yes. Well,
how did you meet him?
I was hooked up with Joey while I was in high school, like my freshman year of high school. I mean, legitimately, I had about 30 somewhere fights as an amateur before I turned pro at 16. My father, I back up a little bit. How I turned pro was the gym was upstairs from the fight club. It was a Friday night. I'm upstairs. I'm just training like as usual. I was a gym rat. I just hung out in the gym 24/7. While the fights were going on inside the bar, my dad was there drinking or whatever and just hanging out. I was upstairs training, and Joey comes up and tells me that one of the guys pulled out last second. They need a fight. I said, okay, cool, no problem. I'll fight him. The catch-20 to this was the guy was a pro fighter. I was only amateur. So I was like, how could I fight a pro fighter if I'm an amateur? He said, well, an amateur can accept to fight a pro, but a pro can't accept to fight amateur. I said, fine, I'll take the fight. I'll do it. He always paid me under the table, so it wasn't no big deal. So, and I mean, it was like $200 at the time. So I went down, I knocked the guy out in probably a minute and a half, maybe less. I know it didn't even go 2 minutes. So as I go back upstairs to the office, I'm chilling up there and I start training again, and I'm right by the office. The door is open, and I see the same guy go in that I just knocked out, and I see Joey at the time, who became my manager. I see him pay this guy like $1,200 cash. So I was like, what the hell? So I ran up in the office and was like, while the guy was in there, I'm like, dude, I just knocked this motherfucker out. Why is he getting paid $1,200? And I just got like shitty $200 under the table. He was like, well, technically, Mel, I can't pay. I'm not allowed to pay you because you're not a pro. You're an amateur. I said, fuck this. So I ran downstairs and grabbed my dad. I ran back upstairs with my dad. I said, Pops, I want to turn pro right now. He said, well, what do you have to do to turn pro? I said, obviously, I just got to sign this paperwork. So I signed, my dad signed the parental permission part, and there I became a pro fighter at 16.
So he got you. He couldn't do it. He could, but he couldn't do it.
Yeah, no,
Not over on you.
No, he did.
like listen to the shenanigans Mike going on. Amateur can accept to fight a pro, but a pro can't accept to fight now. So Melvin is an amateur, he accepts, and then the pro should turn it down then, right? But no, he took it, he got knocked out.
I don't know. I mean, at the time, I'm just a 16-year-old kid. I'm a wrestler. At that time, I wasn't even that good of a striker yet. I was just coming into my own. You know, Kevin Randleman was pretty much my idol. I idolized that guy my whole career. I still do. And I always would notice he would just take guys down and just pound the shit out of them. So that's basically what I did. Ended up knocking the guy out. But yeah, I mean, that's literally my career in a nutshell. Like literally, I was 16 years old and my dad came up and gave me permission to turn pro. And that's how I turned pro at 16. And then I think a few years down the line, by this time I'm like in my 19 or 20, because I went to UFC in 05. I think I was 21 going on. Well, I had just had my 21st birthday. No, sorry, 22nd birthday. But by the time I was 18 or 19, they had changed the rules to where you had to be 18 or older. Even with parental consent, you had to be 18 or older. So I was like, all right, whatever. I guess I missed that cutoff.
So when you were working out with Joe Ancona, who was your jiu-jitsu coach?
Myron Gode, he trained me on my ground game quite a bit. It varied. I mean, it was different guys here and there. I never started to focus on my jiu-jitsu until I'm gonna say probably 4 years into my pro career because I didn't care too much for jiu-jitsu. I was a wrestler. I had already started judo. So my main thing was to take guys down, beat them up. But at that time, between 16 and I'm gonna say 20 years old, I was doing a lot of boxing, kickboxing. So I was competing in kickboxing and boxing and MMA all at the same time. So by the time I got the call for Ultimate Fighter in 2005, I was actually training to defend one of my titles in kickboxing when I got called to the show. It was a funny idea that day too. It was weird because I was in the gym. I thought it was a prank call, so I hung up the phone on him. I'm like, dude, this is a prank. I hung up. This is season 2. This is when everything just started. Plus, they didn't have 55ers yet, so I wasn't even thinking about going on the show. It wasn't even a thought. I'm like, you know what? I'll do that somewhere down the line. I'll accomplish that, but it won't be right now. So hung up again. Joe Ancona comes running in the gym. Mel, you need to take this phone call. I said, all right, man. So I take the call. Now it's Dana White. I recognize his voice instantly. I'm like, oh shit, it's Dana. So I'm like starstruck. I'm like, hey, what's up, Mr. Dana, Mr. White? He's like, hey kid, we've been researching you. We looked you up. You got an impressive record. How would you like to come out and audition for Ultimate Fighter? I was like, is this for real? He's like, yeah, it's for real. I said, yeah. He said, well, how soon can you be ready? I said, shit, I'm ready right now. I mean, I was literally always training, so I never had to get in shape. So he's like, okay, we're gonna fly you out this weekend. This was like a Wednesday night. This was a Wednesday night in Louisiana, and like midday, evening. It was just dusk dark. So it was still daylight in Vegas. And I mean, literally 2 days later, I'm in Vegas. I'm at the Palace Station Hotel, that shitty ass hotel, and I'm stuck there for literally 2 weeks. And I'm getting so agitated. Now, mind you, at the time, I'm young. I don't even have a fucking credit card. Social media didn't exist. So they got us trapped in these damn hotel rooms. And they sending me food, but I don't have a credit card, nothing like that. Everything was always cash. So I can't even order food. I can't even do anything, like literally anything. So I start sneaking out of my room. Literally, I start sneaking out, going downstairs. But then I realized they got a shit ton of fucking people here auditioning for this show. So I just started seeing random guys. I opened my door. I saw George Gazelle right when I opened my door, and I knew George. I knew of him. I knew who he was. So I closed it right away. They actually caught me once sneaking back up to my room. But I mean, like I said, bro, and I was complaining. I'm like, well, bro, I've been here fucking a week and a half. I'm ready to go home. I'm like, you guys didn't interview me. You guys didn't poked on me. You guys checked my brain. I'm like, what is going on? And the one thing that I'll never forget, they told me, the longer you're here, the better. They said there were some guys that came in, flew in the same day, flew out the same day. They said the fact that you've been here this long and I have already gotten a CAT scan, an MRI, you've already got all your physicals done. They said that means in retrospect, more than likely you've made the show. You made the cut. I said, oh, really? Okay. So that wasn't the end of it. The funny part of the story is I go to the interviews. Dana's in there. Some of the guys, I think it was Lorenzo Petito at the time. I didn't know who he was, though, at the time. But he was in there. And then it was the whole cast and crew of Spike TV. So they sit there, and the guy was like, so why do you want to be an Ultimate Fighter? And I looked up, I said, you motherfuckers contacted me. I didn't contact you. You asked me to be on this show. So it's either I'm in or I'm not. And I said, if I'm not, you can send me home today. I've been here 2 weeks already, and I'm fucking ready to go. And fucking Dana was like, I fucking love this kid. This kid has definitely got what it takes to be on the show. And then boom, that's how I was on the show.
Like, you would let that slide, huh?
I mean, because it was like I was agitated. I was ready to go home. You know, mind you this, I had never been away from home. So it was just one of those situations like, you know, I don't have a credit card. I don't have none. I'm young, you know, and you guys are locking me in a fucking room. And to me, that shit, I mean, it felt like jail, you know what I mean? So I was not having it. So literally, after I said what I had to say in the meeting, I literally met the rest of the crew, the rest of the show, everybody that made the show that day. And then, I mean, literally, I went home for like a week. Yeah, I went home for literally 5 days. Flew right back to Vegas. And then there I was for 8 weeks on Ultimate Fighter.
That's wild. Well, let's talk about how your path to get there. So you're in Joe Ancona's gym. Was it strike fast, squeeze hard? Is that what was written on the walls there?
I mean, no. I mean, they had a lot of different styles of fight.
So you're with Marco Macera, Warren Donnelly, Christian Wathermel. You guys are just kind of figuring things out. And your first fight on record is November 16, 2002, Calvin Martin.
That's my cousin. That's my second cousin. His mom is my mother's cousin. Our grandparents are sisters. They both passed away now. But yeah, my first fight was my cousin, and it was supposed to be an exhibition fight. It was never supposed to be a sanctioned fight. But that's just the conniving things that Joe Ancona did back then. I mean, the guy's a snake. All right, like literally, me and my cousin fought as an exhibition in the fight club. You know, and we didn't even get paid for it. We just did an exhibition because we were bored. You know, all the fights were dull. A lot of the fights that really happened in there was like a bunch of drunk guys. You know, it was like Friday night fights, drunk boxing, you know? So we were skilled fighters. We would go down there, put on the show for the bar, and then go back upstairs and train. Well, that's what happened. We went down there, did an exhibition fight, and then next thing I know, it's on my record as I'm 1-0, and it's my cousin. I'm like, that's fucked up. You know, like, I mean, there was no winner. You know, we wasn't trying to, matter of fact, there wasn't even any striking. It was more so a grappling match, a wrestling grappling match, if anything, submission fighting.
Now,
So
let
Kelvin,
me ask you know, down south where you're from, you tell me, because there were some old school guys, you know, that did UFC and stuff like that. Did you think of changing gyms? Like, I mean, like, I think John Dixon's gym is still around, you know?
Well, it was John Dixon's gym's in Mississippi, though. But at the time, you know, I'm a young kid. I don't have any transportation like that. So literally, when I got dropped off to my gym, I would spend all day there, like literally all day. I'll be there from, if I was in school, at this time I'm out of school. By this time I'm out of school, but I literally would be there midday, and I'm in the gym till late at night, and then I'll go down to the bar, like on Fridays and Saturdays, and fight. You know, that was how I was able to build my record so fast. A lot of fights I did in there were sanctioned. They were legit fights. I mean, that's how my record just blew up out of control. I mean, before I actually got to the UFC in 2005, I think on record as a pro, I had 38 pro fights or 36 pro fights, something like that. And I mean, literally, I hadn't lost my first pro fight until my 22nd pro fight against Carlo Prater and that was for the FFC in Biloxi, Mississippi. That was my first loss ever.
Well, we're working that way. So in essence, you were almost a 50 Fight Club member going into the UFC at 21, 22 years old.
At 22, yeah.
Think about that, Miguel. So when you look at your record, like on a surface level, it almost looks abusive in certain like points of your career. So November 16th, Calvin Martin, obviously it's Battle of New Orleans. That's the bar fights that you're talking about. Your second fight on record, I think, is Johnathon. Is it Hargroder?
I'm not sure, man. I've had so many victims. I don't like. I mean, literally, I have fans right now. Literally, they remember fights, even in the UFC, that I just completely forgot about. Like, oh shit, yeah, I forgot I fought that guy. You know what I mean? Literally, I have so many fights. I don't keep up with a lot of them anymore. You know, I just keep on fighting and just keep on putting notches on the belt. Really.
What about Joe Jordan from Iowa?
Yeah, I know who that is. I remember that fight.
Yeah. So Joe Jordan, on your record, it's your third fight. It's a decision in the second round. He's from Miletich Fighting System. Right. He's 6-3 at the time. He goes on an incredible tear right after this, where I think he makes a UFC debut. What do you recall about fighting Joe Jordan? Because that is a stiff fight.
I mean, he was a tough guy. I mean, at that age, man, I'm telling you, bro, I was young. I was limber. Nothing mattered, man. I mean, I was just beating guys, didn't matter. I remember the reason I remember this fight a little bit is because he was from Miletich Fighting System, and I was a big fan of Pat Miletich, Matt Hughes, all those guys. I mean, I idolized these guys. I idolized these guys, you know, growing up. So, you know, coming from a wrestling background, it's crazy because I always wanted to get a chance to go and train in Iowa at the Miletich Fighting System. That's one thing on my bucket list I never got to do. And, you know, it's no regret there, but at the same time, over the years of me fighting and competing, you know, I started noticing that maybe I would not fit in too well with Miletich Fighting System, even if I was going there to visit per se. I mean, it was in Iowa, so that right there should have been a red flag. But you know, I didn't care about all the bullshit. All I cared about was those guys I idolized. You know, I grew up watching Pat Miletich, watching Matt Hughes in his younger day. You know, it's crazy, but I never got a chance to go and train with those guys. But to fight somebody from their gym, it was cool as shit. You know, it was cool as shit to like send that message, like, you know, I'm here, I'm young, I'm hungry.
So after Joe Jordan, 3 weeks later, it's Rob Ramirez, guy you knocked out in 30 seconds. A month later, it's Victor Estrada, a guy that they pulled from Spokane, Washington, super tough cat. And you make your FFC debut with Rob Braniff against Aaron Williams, April 25th, 2003. Right. Aaron Williams is 9-0 at the time.
Right. Well, I was told he was 13-0 at the time, so I don't know how that slipped through the cracks. But I was told he was 13-0. That happened in Biloxi. I remember that. I drove to Biloxi. I would always keep my training gear, in the trunk. Literally when I got there, my coach was fighting on that show, Warren Donnelly, and when I got there, they said somebody had pulled out. I remember Aaron Williams being from that area. He trained up, I guess, at Dixon's or whatever. And so what happened was I literally, by the time I got up the elevator to the show, I went right back down the elevator. Got my bag out the trunk, went to the locker room. They had a doctor check me, and I jumped in the ring. Literally didn't even have time to warm up. I literally just got checked by the doctor, put my clothes on, my tights anyway. I barely wore any clothes at the time. Put my tights on with my cup and literally jumped in the ring.
Yeah, he was at Remix with Alan Belcher at the time. He was no joke, man.
Yeah, I mean he was a tough guy, just not tough for me. I mean, I blew through him like he was nothing. I mean, but at the time I was concerned about his jiu-jitsu and, you know, what they told me briefly about him, you know, in pre-fight. They was like, look, we know you're not into the jiu-jitsu thing, but this guy is a high level jiu-jitsu guy. I don't remember what belt he was at the time, but I was like, I'm not even tripping on that. He ain't gonna be able to take me down, and I'm literally gonna knock him out before he has a chance. And literally, I mean, I picked him up and like threw him. I pitched him like a rag doll across the ring. And then right after that, I swarmed him and boom, 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 the fight's over. In front of a big ass, at the time that was considered a big crowd. It was a big ass crowd, like event center room at the Bois Vage, where they do a lot of plays and stuff. It was like in the middle of the stage. I'm like, it was pretty cool. It was fun.
You remember what you did the very next day?
I stayed in Biloxi for half a day. Then I drove back to New Orleans. And then that night I went out on Bourbon Street and hung out with family and friends to celebrate.
No.
Nope. What was it?
No, you fought back in the bar, Battle of New Orleans against Alex Keonofsky.
Oh, well, shit, I guess I told you, man. It's hard to keep up with everything I've done. That's crazy. I'm surprised you guys.
You drove an hour and a half back and fought again the following night. You knocked him out.
You know, it's funny. It's funny you say that. I've done that. I did that a lot. I mean, literally, when I started driving, I would fight in New Orleans on a Friday night and drive to Atlanta 8 hours from where I lived to where I had to go in Atlanta every single time for the Anarchy fights. I would literally drive. I would fight Friday night, drive, and fight in Atlanta, literally like once or twice a month.
Yeah. You go to Fight Party in Georgia, May 21st, 2003. You fight a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, Diego Saraiva.
Yeah, I smashed this kid, bro. He had no chance. Literally, I held him in my arms like a baby, and I dived to the ground, and my shoulder hit him right in the jaw and knocked him out, and then I smacked him with a couple of punches, and the fight was over. He was laying there still. It's actually on one of the highlights that's on the internet. Like if you look at one of my highlights, and I've never made highlights, always been fans and friends, but there's a highlight on there where it shows a lot of my young career before the UFC. And you'll actually see that knockout on there.
You know, it's funny, like if you listen to the color commentator, I think it's Pat Assalone. All he's doing is talking about himself and what he would do. And no one in this ring's got a chance against me. He's saying it's an early stoppage. Meanwhile, Diego couldn't even lift his legs off the ground. It took him about 2 minutes to get the guy to the stool.
Because he kept trying to pull guard, you know. And I was in my mind, I'm like, that shit is not about to work on me, bro. Like, you might want to figure this out. And literally, I grabbed him by his leg, and I kind of just pitched him. I mean, like I said, bro, I was a young, aggressive, strong fighter. Like I was a wrestler, so I was just used to just picking guys up and just throwing them around. I mean, literally, while I was still competing in wrestling in high school, my senior year, I almost got disqualified the state championship semifinals before the final, the match before the finals, because I spiked the kid too hard, and literally they disqualified me. But the kid and his coach came back. I had been beating this kid all year for the past 2 years. He never can beat me. So his coach and them, they knew firsthand that this kid would not beat the kid that I was getting ready to face. So they came to me and was like, look, we're not going to take this from you. You deserve it. You earned it. We know you're going to beat this Brother Martin kid. I know my kid won't win. And that's when they let me back into the tournament. I was originally disqualified for my state tournament in the semifinals. So like I said, I had been training MMA for so long. I mean, there were quite a few wrestling matches in high school. I remember using certain like joint locks and holds to keep kids pinned down to the mat, you know, which was like probably all the way illegal in high school wrestling. But it was a few like little joint manipulations and stuff like that. There was a lot of things I would get away with in high school wrestling because I was just that more involved in the fight game than all the kids that just straight up wrestled.
Wow. Yeah, Diego Saraiva, Miguel, at one point, he's got his legs around Melvin's waist when they're standing, trying to pull his head down to go to the guard. Melvin treats it like a tie clinch and just starts launching hooks. Diego, man, he bit off way more than he could chew that night. Like, you were nasty. That was a nasty fight.
Well, the thing I tell people about the fight game, and I still hold close to this, like you have to be born into this. You have to be born to do this. It's like, I played football growing up. I hated basketball, but I played all kinds of sports, baseball, whatever, track. When you're an athlete, you're an athlete. But when it comes to fighting, it is something you have to be born with. And what I mean by that is you have to have that aggression, that killer instinct. A lot of fighters don't have that. I mean, it's okay to go to the gym and learn a martial art and learn how to do something. But to do it at this level, at the level that I've been doing it for so long, it's not easy, and, these past few years recently, I've hit a little down slope, because I wasn't taking things too serious, moving around a lot. I was literally fighting on your show in October when my grandmother passed away that morning. I'll never forget that. My grandma passed that morning. When I fought that fight on your card, it took everything in me to even show up because I was numb. I'm like, I don't care. And it showed in the fight. I didn't even fight. I just held on to the guy the whole fight for 3 rounds. It was a disappointing fight, but nobody knew what had happened earlier that day. You know what I'm saying? So what I mean to say is like, everybody shouldn't be able to just walk into an MMA ring and call themselves a pro fighter. And right now, the UFC has it really bad. Like it's just so washed out with fighters. They still have a ton of great fighters in there, but they got a shit ton of fighters that would never, in 2005 to 2010, would have never got a second look to being in the UFC. They wouldn't even got a phone call. I don't think everybody should get a chance to just walk into an MMA ring and call themselves a pro fighter. It's rude. It's rude to the sport. It's rude to guys like me, who actually had to really fight. There was no easy fights in the UFC. There were none. Not one of my fights in the UFC were easy.
No. How many did you have? About 30, correct?
I think 30 or 36, something like that. I don't know. I lost count a long time ago.
36. Yeah.
It's something like that. But I know right now, I've been out of the UFC 8 years. I still hold the record for most knockouts at lightweight. And I think Dustin Poirier just tied me. If he gets another knockout at lightweight, he'll pass me. But literally, I've been out of the UFC 8 years, and it takes until now for somebody to be threatening to pass me up at lightweight. And you know what? I didn't get to accomplish a lot of things I set out to accomplish in the UFC, like fighting for the title. I never even fought for the UFC title. I came close, but it didn't happen. But for me, that title, that record I hold, I'm proud of that because at least it gave me something to be proud of for the time that I was in the UFC.
Well, your road there wasn't an easy one. Your next fight was against Paul Purcell, the Picnic.
Yeah, and I fought him.
Spokane.
He was a middleweight. I was a lightweight. I was supposed to fight the hometown guy, but Chris Hallman, he came in and something happened where they had to switch the fight. But Chris Hallman and Paul Purcell were on the same team. So they gave my 155-pound fight to Chris Hallman and then literally asked me, well, we got this guy that'll fight you, but he's 186 pounds. I said, I don't care. I'll take it. We flew to Seattle and drove all the way to Kalispell, Montana in a car, like on a road trip. So it was a long flight and then like an 8-hour drive. So I'm like, I'm not coming all the way this way and not fighting. And it was in like a bull, where they keep the bulls at and where they do the rodeo things at?
Like a ring.
Yeah, it was in one of those things where like tarp all on the dirt, but it still got dirt in there. By the time I fought, you had like mud and dirt underneath my feet from the sweat and everything in there. And literally made quick work of that guy too. Didn't take me too long to beat him up either. So
Paul Purcell, he's 7-2 at this time. It's like, if you look at his record, it's murderer's row. Like he is legit. He's also got a knockout win over Nick Thompson. What was it like dealing with Brett Moses, the promoter of Art of War?
He was cool, man. I didn't deal much with the promoters at the time. Before the UFC, Joe Ancona was my manager, which was probably one of the biggest mistakes in my life. But like I said, I was young. He provided the gym for me. It was free. I didn't have to pay. So, when I signed the contract with him, I was young. I didn't know any better. Brett was a nice guy. I met him a few times with Joe. He was a good friend of Joe Ancona's. So they kept me busy, So like I said, man, like I was fighting maybe 4 to 5 times in a month, I would fight. Sometimes multiple fights. Like I would literally fight 2 or 3 times in a night. You know what I mean? So that's why when I tell people my record, people are like, damn, you really did that many fights? Yeah, I mean, shit, just in 2014, I think I fought somewhere around 8 or 9, maybe 10 fights that year.
That's a career for most of these people.
I know,
like that's...
I know. But see, my mentality with fighting is this. You could train every day, all day, but training and battle is 2 different things. It plays out differently. You know, you have to prepare your mind to be able to go to battle. A lot of fighters, I know a lot of fighters, like some are friends, some aren't. They're great in the gym. They're amazing in the gym. I mean, the shit they pull off sometimes, you know, they kick me in the liver, I gotta take a knee. Fine. It's the gym though. But I see some of these same fighters, they get in the ring and it's like they mind go blank. And it's like, what the hell? Like, where's the guy that was in the gym training? Like, where's that guy? You know what I'm saying? Like, there are a lot of fighters that are really good at teaching and training, but they don't have the killer instinct and the heart that they think they have to get in the ring and fight somebody toe to toe. I mean, I was never afraid of it. I mean, I embraced it. It's like somebody that wants to jump out of an airplane. To me, fighting is my adrenaline rush. You know, I love what I do, you know, and I'm passionate about it. That's why I'm 39 years old and I still want to fight. I don't, like, people are asking me now more in my career, more and more, well, when are you going to retire? I don't know. I don't have an exit date because when it's over, it's over. When it's done, yeah, it's done. And it's not something I want to say goodbye to.
Right. After Purcell, Rich Clementi student, Kyle Bradley from Team Voodoo, yep. Future UFC veteran. That's your next opponent. It's his debut. I figured maybe this was the first time Clementi was testing the waters with you.
I mean, me and Rich are good friends now, really good friends. But in that time period, we hated each other, couldn't stand each other. We were state rivals, you know, like I came in, blew up on Ultimate Fighter. You know, he wasn't the big dog no more. So then we started having issues. I had a lot of respect for Rick. Well, I do now again. But at that time, I had a lot of respect for him because he was the guy I knew that beat my wrestling coach, Warren Donnelly. And to me, Warren Donnelly was like the god to me because I was just a little kid when he was teaching me all the MMA stuff after practice. Like I was literally stay at wrestling practice from 2:15 in the evening. From 2:15 in the evening till like 8, 9 o'clock at night. That would be my time at school. I would be at school until then. My coach would bring me home. I started right back up again, 6 a.m. My childhood was training. I didn't do anything but train. So when Rich brought Kyle into the mix, he's a known stand-up fighter, kickboxer. I said, okay, whatever. I'll take it. I knew beating him was going to get to Rich. So that's how I approached that fight. Over the years, though, like I said, me and Kyle Bradley been friends for a long time. Me and Rich, literally, like I'm gonna say, this year. It happened this year. We seen it. Well, last year, the end of last year, we seen each other twice. We just, you know, I'm older now, you know, mature, and I went up to him, shook his hand, and said, "Look, man, whatever issues we had while I was young, I'm over it. You know, let's see what we can do. Because I'm wanting to move back home. There's things I got planned as far as gyms." That guy, he knows his shit. When it comes to gyms and training people, he knows his shit. I met all his sons. All his sons are wrestlers. One has this long little hippie hairdo. They some cool kids, man. And it's great to say that I can call him a friend now because we wasn't friends for a long time. But I consider him to be a good friend now. When I just scored my 49-second knockout 2 weeks ago in New Orleans, in Houma, he was there with the boys. Took pictures with the boys. I didn't even know that they were going to be there, but it was cool to see them again. So, you know, that just come with maturity and growing up. You know what I mean? I'm not that same kid I was in my mid-20s.
Yeah, but I'll tell you that I'm from the, you know, I did shows in Indiana and I'm from the Northeast. But that Guillard Clementi rivalry, we knew about it up here. You know what I mean?
It wasn't a secret, bro. Everybody knew I hated to do it. I mean, every interview I did, I was broadcasting it. I was publicizing it. When he beat me in UFC 77 Nemesis, I was I was mad. And you know what? That was the first time in my life, in my career. I was always taught never fight angry. Always keep a clear mind so you can think before you do things, like so you can react a certain way. Everything is reacting. I was so angry with this dude that night. Like, I didn't care. I wanted to kill him. So I was like, I don't care. I don't care. And I clouded my mind. The fight was shitty. I got tapped out. And it went from that to, motherfucker, when I see you at the after party, bro, I say, and we was in Vegas. I'm like, bro, I'm going to find you. You can't hide from me. I'm going to find you. We're going to finish this fight. Man, Dana came up to me and was like, kid, you ain't doing that tonight. He's like, if I hear anything, and Dana was right. One thing about Dana, that's his town. Anything that happens in that fucking city, he knows about it. So he was like, if you do anything outside of this event tonight, I got to let you go. I said, all right. And that put the leash on me. I was like, all right, bet. I'm not allowed to do him nothing. So a few months went by. We got home. I was home visiting. Just so happened they had a fight down in Houma, Louisiana at the same Civic Center I just fought at. Guess who comes walking through the back entrance? Rich Clementi. Man, we immediately, boom, we go at it. Blah, 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 blah. We got at least one round in. The cops let us get one round in, and I was satisfied after that. But I was about to go for a second round. It was like, no, Guillard, if you guys go out there and fight again, I'm going to have to arrest you. Like, literally, it's like 15 cops. They got us surrounded, like basically making the cage, the wall for us. We're inside of 15 cops fighting, literally. And after that, I just called it even. I said, you know what? You won on TV. I guess I won behind the scenes. We'll take that. I'll take that W, and we'll move on from here. But at that time, I still didn't like the guy. But over those years, man, nothing else happened between us.
Sometimes even isn't enough. That's what it is.
Well, for me, I never wanted to hate Rich. I never wanted to dislike him. I respected the guy. If anything, I wanted him to teach me certain things because he was the guy I knew that beat my coach. And my coach to me was unbeatable. All right. So when he knocked out my coach, I was like, I can learn something from this guy. So there were times where he would show up at Ancona's, this was before we got really had the beef. This was early in the beef. But I started realizing he was just being an ass. I'm like, bro, I'm a young kid. You're older than me, but I'm trying to learn something. I want you to teach me. That's how I am with anybody. If you could teach me something, I'm going to humble myself to let you teach me because obviously you got something that I'm looking for. That's how this went down. But then I started getting rumors and shit was passing by from mouth to mouth from people, other fighters. Man, Rich talking shit on about you, Rich talking down on you. At one point, somebody even told me he was racist. So it was a lot of shit that was spread and said. All right, I don't know the truth to a lot of it. I never cared, but I was the type of person I could tell by body language. And then Rich just started acting really funny with me. So I took that as maybe what people are saying is true. And that's how I approached it with him. And that's why it got as bad as it did at times. But like I said, I'm older now. He's older. He's got some amazing boys. His boys are
history, man.
They're tearing shit up down there, bro. I follow his kids' careers, through social media. But when I get ready to move back to New Orleans and start my schools, he is definitely somebody that I'm going to be looking to partner with and have some business going because my name itself is going to bring people. I have people right now at home. They can't wait for me to make it back home. But I live in 3 different places. I live here, I live in Miami, I live in New Orleans. So, I have to be between 3 places, unfortunately. That's just how life is. But that's how my life is because I just made it that way. But when I make it home and ready to open these gyms, Rich Clementi is probably going to be, if not an equal partner, somebody of great interest that's going to help me with my gyms because I know for a fact with him on board, my gyms will definitely be successful.
Yeah, he knows how to run a business. Man.
I'm just gonna call it like I see it, man. The guy knows his shit, and it sounds crazy to say it like this, but I can trust him. I know I can.
Yeah.
I can trust the guy. So he's definitely somebody that I speak highly of now. Like I said, I jumped over the barricade my last fight to give him a hug. I didn't even know him and the boys were there. Who would have thought I would jump over the barricade and hug Rich Clementi, damn near pick him up off the floor, take a picture with him and all his boys. I think people that know me and his history are probably shocked to see that now.
Melvin, you jumping over that.
Let me get
you jumping over that barricade a few years earlier. Man, that would have been interesting.
Yeah, right.
Hey, I got a question for you. So you gave Rich a hug, huh? Rich is a friend of the podcast here, huh? What did you get your arms around him? Is he getting a little hefty? What's he looking like?
I heard he's getting
I
big,
mean,
man.
shit. I mean, hey, looking back at my fight, dude, I was literally exactly 200 pounds even when I went into my fight this past week. So I'm looking a little heavy too. And right now, I'm trying to schedule. We're trying to get the deal done right now for BKFC for me to fight October 1st here in Denver. Or if before that they have a fight they're supposed to have in Louisiana. If that one happens first, I'll be ready for that. Right now, I'm actually in the process right now of cutting weight to start getting down to about 185 so that I can make a comfortable cut 275. I'm not fighting anymore at 85 for bare knuckle. I mean, it was cool to fight, the average guys. But when I ran into Joe Riggs, another good friend of mine, when I ran into Riggs, that shit was life-changing because that could have ended my career. That fight by itself could have ended me. So I gotta be a little bit more cautious and careful. I think it's time for me to be smarter. When I was younger, I could be reckless. I didn't care who I fought, when I fought. Right now, I'm tapering off the end of my career. It's time to start being a little bit more smarter about not only what weight to fight at, but who I'm fighting, if that makes sense.
No, that's very good to hear, man. Because you for a long time, you didn't take care of yourself. It's good to hear you doing that now. And Rich is the kind of guy, he'll help you because he's a terrible enemy to have, but he's a great friend to have.
Yeah, man. And you know what? I learned that, and I unfortunately I had to learn that the hard way. But I'm proud of myself because as I got older, I got wiser, and I started realizing who could possibly benefit my life in ways, you know what I mean? And like I said, he's a good, positive person back home in Louisiana. You know what I'm saying? Everybody, he has all the connections. Not only that, he's a great father. He's a great person, bro. I was angry at him for a lot of reasons that wasn't even my own reasons, but I was young, you know what I mean? I didn't understand anything. Nobody couldn't tell me shit. Now, I sit back and I take a look at my own life and I'm like, if I keep down that path, man, I'm never going to end up with any good, reliable friends in the end of this, because when this is all done with me, because the sport going to be done with me a lot faster than I'm done with it. And I still want people to want my autograph. I still want fans to love me.
Respect.
I still want to say that I left a positive mark on my life and this sport. You know what I mean? And right now, the last few years, I've done a lot of damage to myself in this sport. You know what I'm saying? Especially like promoters not having faith in me, commissioners in Florida not having faith in me. You know what I mean? I would have never thought my career would have been like this. So now I'm digitally, I'm working like tirelessly around the clock to fix what I broke. And nobody broke this but me. I was the one that accepted fights I shouldn't have. Like when I fought Adesanya, before I knew who he was, I told the kid when he beat me that night, and I was outmatched. I was out. Like I had never been outmatched in my life. I felt like I was like the opponent. I've never felt like that in my whole entire career until I fought Adesanya. And I told that kid while he was crying to me, he's like, "Man, you're one of my favorite fighters." It was a humbling experience. But I told that kid that night in the locker room after he beat me, I said, "Man, you're the next fucking UFC middleweight, bro." I said, if you was to fight Anderson Silva right now, bro, you would give Anderson a run for his money, if not beat him. I told Adesanya that in Australia. We had a personal conversation. And now to see him so successful at what he's doing, I have an eye for talent, man. But that night, I had an eye for getting my ass whooped because that kid, he fucking dished it out, bro. He dished it out. And like I said, I was always the one like just dishing out ass whooping after ass whooping. To get a piece of humble pie that Adesanya gave me, it was life-changing, So then I had to hit the reset button. I was like, you know what? I got to start thinking about what the fuck I'm doing now. Because for a minute, I was thinking retirement, but I was like, what else am I going to do? Every time I think about retiring, that's exactly how it comes off to me. Like, what else am I going to be happy doing? And I can't think of anything that's going to make me as happy as getting in the ring and competing. There's nothing.
Yeah. Happy is the key word there. What about your first trip to Japan, shoot box, July 23rd, 2004, Kenichi Ogata? What do you remember about that trip?
I mean, I don't remember much about the trip. I do remember the Japanese people are very very respectful. I mean, the culture. I love Japan. Like that is probably one place that I would probably live if I wanted to move out of no, not Louisiana. If I wanted to move out of the United States, it would be Japan. Japan and London. Those are my top two. But I've been digging Japan for quite a while. I don't remember much about that fight, but I do remember the culture and the people. Because when I went back and I fought Gomi, it was the same type of thing, but it was so different then because they had people with big ass blow up heads of me. You know, couldn't walk through the airport, other hotel without getting swarmed by Japanese people. Then I realized Japanese women love black guys. I was like, oh man, I love this place. You know, I was like, I don't want to go back. I just leave me here. And I mean, it was an amazing trip, man. Like both times that I've been, you know, and I will make my way back to Japan at some point. Hopefully
That's
to
cool.
fight before my career is over, fight again in Japan.
You fought Justin Wieman, Shaggy at Fight Party, August 2nd, 2003. He's 8-4 out of Rockford Kickboxing and Jiu-Jitsu. He's got a win over UFC veteran Brian Garrity.
Don't remember much about the fight. I remember the name, but I don't remember.
Okay, Melvin, how ugly is your hand in regards to its shape?
Oh, man, I mean, it's about, if you can see it, it's about 10 times the size of a state. It shouldn't, like 10 times size of what it should be. But
Okay.
It doesn't hurt. Everybody always look at it like, oh man, is your hand swollen? It's not swollen. All right. That's just the calcium. So everybody know. The hand specialist said when I'm done fighting that they can shave it back down and it'll go back to like this. It'll go back even like that. So no big deal. If anything, it's harder and stronger. I haven't broken it since the Brandon Gertz fight, I think 6 or 7 years ago now. So when I shattered it on Gert's head, that's when it exploded and I had to have the surgery. So out of 14 breaks in my career, I've only had one surgery on.
So that's the first time you broke your hand with Wieman.
I've had 14 breaks. So over the course of my career, I can't even tell you. 3 of my broken hands did come in the UFC with stitch wrapping my hands. And then I switched over. I got my boy Big Tate that works for UFC. I actually got Tate the job with the UFC as a cut man. He was a paramedic, firefighter paramedic, but he always would wrap my hands and I never had issues. But then it got to a point where it was like, well, the only people can wrap your hands, it has to be certified officials in the UFC. So then right after they started talking crazy like that, I'm like, well, Tate, we got to get you in. He's like, you think so? I'm like, bro, I'm going to get you in. So I made a few calls. Dana was one, of course. Then I talked to a few people, and the next thing I know, my boy Tate was in the UFC. He's still there. You know what I mean?
Still there.
I love that. Yeah, I love that dude, bro. But me and my ex-wife, he's a really close friend of ours, man. Like, he always would wrap my hands. I always made sure he was in my corner. So yeah, man, we've had a really, I've shared my career with a lot of people, man, that I consider family.
And for those just listening, not watching, it's cartoonish. It looks like somebody hit it with a mallet and it just blew up and he's like waving it like it was on fire. It's huge.
It's still functional though. I can do everything with it, you know, everything.
So you broke your hand against Shaggy. You were out a few months, December 19, 2003. FFC 7, Carlo Prater.
That was my first loss. I'll never forget that night. You know what psyched me out and what had me beat before the fight started? This is the first time I'll say it out loud. The only other person knew about this was Warren Donnelly, my coach. When I saw Yves Edwards in his corner, it fucking, like, I idolized Yves, you know, because, you know, he's a young black guy fighting in the UFC. Den Thomas was one of the guys too. Like, to see those guys pave the way for guys like me, I was like, shit. When I saw freaking Yves, I was lost for words. I was wanting to go talk to him in the locker room, man. And literally while we were fighting, I think I was just more psyched out the fact that he was in Prater's corner than anything. And I literally beat myself. I beat myself before the fight even happened.
Yeah, Yves Edwards, an absolute pioneer, should be in the UFC Hall of Fame. Like, that guy is.
Yeah, he definitely should be. Den Thomas definitely should be. I mean, there's a lot of guys, man. BJ Penn, of course, he's already there. But I mean, there's a lot of fighters a lot of fighters that I think should be in the Hall of Fame. You don't have to win. My thing is you don't have to win. Turn this light off. You don't have to win a freaking title to be a Hall of Famer.
I agree.
I mean, record setting guys. I think certain fighters who fought certain fighters. When my career in the UFC, I had one of the biggest problems that I had in the UFC, believe it or not, was them keeping fights for me. After a while, guys will pull out. Guys start getting hurt mysteriously. So then as somewhere along the line, they ended up started saying, well, guys that are saying they're hurt, they're going to have to report here to Vegas and go to our doctors, and then we're going to have them checked. And then when that happened, mysteriously, a lot of guys stopped getting hurt. But I know for a fact, they didn't even related to me a few times. There are a lot of guys that I was supposed to fight that didn't want to fight me. Me and BJ Penn had a personal conversation in the back walkway of the Mandalay Bay. I'll never forget it. And literally, he said, "Man, I would have took this fight, but I have everything to lose and you have everything to gain. I don't think fighting you would be a smart fight for me." And I didn't take it as a disrespect thing. I took it as a respect
compliment.
Yeah, and literally right after that conversation, that was when I went on my 7-fight win streak in the UFC. I mean, just talking to BJ, I admired him. I looked up to him. Like, just hearing that from BJ, it just sparked a fire, man. I was like, you know what? If BJ Penn don't want to fight me, I'm going to make sure nobody want to fight me. And this is pretty fucking cool. Like, it gave me, I don't know. I found energy from somewhere, man, but I just started my training sessions were better. I was just riding a high, man.
Mental edge. Melvin, on June 30th, 2004, FFC had a King of Kings kickboxing tournament. It is probably one of the most did you know it was legendary at the time, or did it take you a minute to kind of realize it?
No, I knew. And Fight for Lee coaching those guys, man. Those guys were some promoters that I had a long-lasting career with. And, they always looked out for me. My thing at the time was winning title belts. Money comes and goes, but title belts, they're forever. And for me, it's not just UFC, Bellator, BKFC. When you earn belts, that's something that follows you forever. I don't have any kids yet, but I always told myself, if I rack up belts now, my kids will have something that they knew their father was great at, So collecting belts was my thing. One of the saddest parts of my career was not being able to fight for the UFC belt, not having the opportunity to try and win it. Bellator was the same. I mean, it was, hit or miss. But like I tell people right now in this moment, my career isn't over. You know what I mean? And I've seen a lot of older fighters that are a little bit older than me, like, make the impossible happen. So, it's just about getting around the right people and just getting it done. But when Lee coaching those guys, man, there was great times, man. Like, I had a lot of fun fighting in Biloxi at the Beau Rivage. It made me feel famous before I was famous, if that makes sense. Because back home, between the Gulf Coast region, Houston, Atlanta, I was already a known fighter before I even made it to the UFC. So the UFC being an Ultimate Fighter, that just put the stamp on it. But the kickboxing tournament was very interesting that night.
Yeah, you was a 8-man tournament. Bone Sayavonga is your first. Your first bout.
Some Russian guy, whatever he was from, but didn't speak hardly any English.
You knocked him out. Second round, dude. It's a rematch for Carlo Prater.
Yeah,
Yves Edwards was not in his corner at this time.
Right. I mean, Prater, like I said, Prater was one of those guys. He was a great fighter, but he was a better teacher than he was a fighter. We actually became teammates for a long while at a Metro Fight Club with Saul Solis. God rest his soul. He's she's one of the most legendary trainers. He was one of my great friends, man. I miss him every day. One of the toughest trainers I ever had, really. I mean, he wouldn't let you out of the gym until you were dead beat, tired. You didn't have time to do anything else. But with Carlo, man, he was known for his kickboxing. And he was slightly taller than me. I've always fought guys that are much taller than me for some reason. I'm average. I'm only 5'9", average height. So, most of the time, even in wrestling, I wrestled guys that were a lot taller than me. So I just learned Lee King. He was another guy, teammate. We fought each other, but he was so long. I mean, I could barely walk after a kickboxing match with him one time.
Yeah. So Carlo Prater, and you wind up in the finals against Rich Clementi. It's probably like in the MMA circles, this might be the most legendary independent grind of kickboxing matches. And, you know, having that 8-man is just incredible. You also broke your hand in that fight.
Yeah.
In that tournament.
Yeah, I did. I mean, I broke it, kept fighting with it, but it just started getting worse and worse. And then it got to a point where I couldn't continue. I was pissed though, because like I said, at that time, that was one of those times and moments in my life where me and Rich didn't get along. I wanted that belt. It was a pretty cool looking belt too. So when I fell short of getting it, man, I was just devastated, you know, and at the time, it just made me hate him even more. It just gave me another reason to not like him even more. I swear, man, like in my career, he's probably the one and only person I could say that I did not like at the time. I mean, most guys I would fight, I would become friends with. Me and Nate Diaz fought, we're good buddies. Me and Cowboy was already friends when we fought. I mean, literally, I think so far in my career, I've fought, including Joe Riggs as a friend, or a legit friend, I've fought now 8 guys in my career that I was actually literally friends with before we fought.
Wow. How was Rob Braniff as a promoter?
Say that again?
How was Rob Braniff as a promoter?
Mr. Rob, he was cool. Like I said, those guys were great to me, man. Like, always was available to fight. They let me fight as much as I wanted. I never really cared about who I was fighting. I just wanted to fight. So I was never a complicated client. You know, I was one of those fighters, even in the UFC. I mean, whoever they wanted me to fight, I step up and fight. There are a lot of fighters that dance around certain guys. They don't want to face certain guys, or they try to face guys later in their career. You know, I was never set up that way. You know, I'm a fighter. This is what I do. And I'm going to do it this way because I never have any regret in my career to say, well, I mean, I probably would have did this if I would have fought this fight. Or, you know, I would never have to say that. Whether I won or lost, you know, I still would do it the same way I've always done it. You know, fight who's in front of me, take those fights. But now that I'm older, I'm starting to see now that fighting younger guys, it could be a little bit more difficult, like in the MMA part of it. Not so much the bare knuckle side as of yet, but with bare knuckle, I plan on dropping back down in weight. Those guys are just too big for me. But I don't regret anything in my career, man. You know, I wish I could have did more in the UFC. I feel like I was falsely released on bullshit when I did get released for the Michael Johnson fight, because I was supposed to rematch Ross Pearson, who said he was injured. But then literally 2 months later, he was fighting in Albuquerque on the card against freaking the Nightmare. So I'm like, Diego Sanchez. So I'm like, how the hell is he hurt? How come he couldn't fight in London again? Made me go all the way back to London when I could have fought, me and Michael Johnson could have just fought on the Dallas card that was that year. So when all that happened, me and Joe Silva, the matchmaker, we had a few words on the bus. Next thing I know, by Tuesday or Wednesday of that next week, I was at home in Miami. I got a call from Dana himself. He said, kid, you know, I gotta release you for at least 2 or 3 fights, but I'll let you work your way back. And I'm like, why am I being released? What did I do wrong? Well, Joe wasn't happy. And I was like, Joe Silva's not even a freaking owner. He's a freaking matchmaker. But I didn't know he had brought shares and became a partner. So I was unaware of all this. So I'm not arguing with the matchmaker. I'm arguing with the owner, one of the owners. And I was always great with Joe Silva, always cordial, always saying hi to him. You know, I know he was into like collecting action figures and stuff. A little weird of a guy, but a real nice guy. I never had any issues with him. When this happened, bro, I felt like it was like a personal vendetta. So I took it personal, but instead of me taking my career and doing something and making it better, like using that anger in a good way, I let it get the best of me. And then like literally not even a year and a half after that, me and my wife filed for divorce. Shit just started crumbling after that, man. Like the UFC was my baby. It's like, I want to start there and I want to finish there. You know, watching Cowboy, lay his gloves down the other night, it brought tears to my eyes because I felt like I may not get a chance to do that. And that's how I wanted to end my MMA career. It was by laying my UFC gloves in that ring. And I may not get that chance. I had just fought 2 weeks before that. So I didn't even make weight for the Cowboy fight because they was trying to get me to cut to 55 again. But they gave me a pass. Plus, Cowboy didn't care because he wanted to fight here in Denver. So that's the kind of fighter I am. That's the person I was. When you call me, I show up. When you want me to fight someone, I don't ask questions. I just show up and I do my job. When I got released, I took it personal. Dana gave me a fair shot, though. He said, kid, go win 1 or 2 fights. And if my comment to Dana that day, and I'll never forget it, was, who you think is going to let me fight a 1 or 2 fight deal under contract after me leaving this career behind in the UFC? Nobody's going to sign me to a short deal. They're going to try to sign me for a long-term deal. Went to World Series of Fighting, and that's what happened. They tried to sign me to a longer deal. I tried to rack those fights up pretty quick, but I wasn't happy. It wasn't what I wanted. And after that, I just kind of fell into a little bit of a depression and I was just angry at myself because I felt like it was my fault I let that happen.
So, Miguel, speaking of World Series of Fighting, did you ever spar with Ali over at Jackson Wink?
Yeah. Yeah, me and Ali, I wouldn't say we were good friends, but we were cordial at times, and we were teammates for a short while. He started managing fighters, so he ventured off to do that. But then I didn't even know he was behind certain fighters that were, like, trying to fight me. And then for some reason, I don't know how it happened, but me and him started having words. And like I told him, I was like, bro, just come to the gym, dude. Like, we ain't got to take it to the streets. You're used to fight. So come to the gym. We'll put some gloves on. We'll handle it man to man. I don't know what was said, but there was some things passed back and forth between me and him for quite a while. So after a while, I just told him, look, man, when you see me, you see me. But he's another guy. I'm older now, more mature. Like, I got to stress that fact. But he's another guy that I'm proud of, man. Like, he took managing and being an agent from being a fighter, so he knows what fighters goes through, what managers at times. So he knows both sides. So I think he's good for business when it comes to young fighters, and he has an eye for talent, unfortunately. He has a lot of fighters that are up there in the limelight that are doing really good right now.
Did you ever have a fight lined up in St. Petersburg against Mike Lee?
And Tampa, and it fell through. Yep, Tampa. In Tampa, Florida.
What year was that?
I can't remember, but I know my cousin Calvin was with me.
Was it 2001?
It could be. It was early. I was
what
young. Got there and something fell through with the other fighter. Like some guy, I guess, that I was supposed to fight didn't show up or couldn't make weight or something, or was like way too big. And then they tried to switch him. I don't know. They tried to switch him off and give me a different fighter, but then something happened with that fight. We went through 3 different fighters in that short period of time trying to get me to fight, and it just didn't happen. The fight just fell through.
Yeah, this was like before your career really got going, though, correct?
No, this was young. This is really early, really, really early.
Yeah, so your first fight was, from what I understand, 2001, St. Petersburg, Florida, which is Tampa. Mike Lee, legendary fighter, had an asthma attack at weigh-ins, and they canceled the fight. That's what I found. What about training with Jeff Strickland?
Man, that guy was a clown, man. That dude was a clown. He fed me all this bullshit saying he fought K1 and did this. Found out the guy was pretty much a fraud, man. Like, legitimately fraud. Nothing about him was true and honest. So, he just kind of faded away, like he should have.
At FFC 8, you fight Jake Short. Obviously, you lose that one. Jake took the fight last minute. I think in the airport on the way, he was cornering somebody. Not an easy adjustment for yourself. He's a real big guy, too. And then you got 2 losses in a row at this point. You've got, your Carlo Prater. You got the kickboxing issue, where you broke your hand. Right. You got Jake Short. Where are you mentally at this stage in your career?
I don't know. At this point, I'm just trying to find myself. I'm trying to get back in the winning column. And it's crazy bringing that up right now because I'm finding myself in that same, like, you know how they say the life circle comes, like goes right back around. I'm finding myself in that same situation right now. So at that point, man, like I'm still young. So I'm like, what do I do? Just go out and get more fights. But like I said, I had shitty management. Joe Ancona was not a good manager. I mean, he was connected, but as far as getting me the fights I need, he was never that guy. All he cared about was me fighting, him collecting his 20%, and that was it. Like the guy didn't care nothing about anything. So I took matters into my own hands. I started leaning more towards my coach, which is Warren Donnelly. He was always been my mentor. He's the reason I started doing this in high school. So with him on board, you know, he started helping me more. He started being around more. And then from there, it went from him along with Myron Gode, who's been a big spark in my life too as well. So with them two on board, I just started to buckle on and just focused on training more, and then let them start helping Joe pick me the right fights.
How was your experience with Malki Kawa?
Melky's good people, man. I mean, we parted ways. I mean, it happened after I left the UFC. You know, I was really dealing more with his brother Abraham. Me and Melky was close too, but Abraham was really my go-to guy. And you know, they just, the business got bigger. You know, John was always their first priority. I didn't take no offense to it, but that's just what it is. You know, John was the champ at the time, and you know, he's their big meal ticket. Plus, Melky got into doing the NFL. He was agent now for NFL, so it opened a lot of doors to me meeting different athletes. But I didn't feel like they was that focused on me personally, and it was more of a personal thing. So I decided to just walk away at the time. I was like, you know what, it's not working no more. You know, you guys, I mean, I barely hear from you guys. I'm not getting any attention. You know, I'm calling you guys trying to figure out when am I fighting again, when it used to be, hey, Mel, I got another fight for you. Hey, Mel, we got this for you. You know, we just kind of grew apart. That's all. It was never any bad blood. We actually have the same birthday on the same date. So, you know, there's a lot of things we share over the years, you know, together. We still call each other around our birthdays and stuff like that. But, you know, he's a busy guy. So I can only make time for the people that make time for me, pretty much. And it's getting more and more like that right now because of me being older. I'm not in my prime anymore, per se. So, you know, getting even promoters to like let me fight on their cards. You know, I don't care. I never cared if I was going to end my career fighting local shows, because the local shows were more intimate, more personal. You know, you got person, your close family, close friends, everybody in the small town or your hometown know you. Even when I came to Chicago and fought there, I mean, that was my first time, but people welcomed me with open arms. You know what I mean? Like, I like those smaller vibes than the big spotlight now. I mean, it's kind of crazy to say it, but I prefer something small and intimate, more personal than something just really big and blown out of proportion.
Okay. All right. So you Cal Bradley, after your loss, rattles off 5 wins in a row. You guys, from what I understand, are training occasionally with each other. You rematch with him at FFC 9. It's kind of a legendary card.
Right. I mean, I was ready for it. You know, I knew it was going to happen. Back home in Louisiana, between Louisiana and Biloxi, we're the big names. You know what I mean? So I knew the fight was going to be made. I knew eventually we was going to fight again, and that's where we ended it, man. I mean, it was meant for us to fight. You know, it's just one of those circuits where when you're the best guys in town, the best guys are going to fight the best guys.
In Extreme Challenge 58, it was in Minnesota, June 11, 2004. Miguel, I see this dude wearing Snoopy slippers, big sunglasses, and weigh-ins, talking. And you fight one of Monty Cox's biggest ticket sellers,
right,
in Rich Miller.
Right. I remember that. Man, I don't know. It's just, I never really cared for Mr. Monty Cox. You know, he was Rich's manager at the time. So it was like one of those hate relationships. If I don't like this guy, I can't like that guy. But he as a promoter, he took care of me. I went up there, had some good fights. I mean, but it was all about showmanship. For me, it was about beating a guy before I actually got into the ring. And that's what fighters don't understand. Like, you can win a fight before it even happens. Like that fight 2 weeks ago, I beat that guy. I beat him at weigh-ins. It wasn't even trying. I was smiling, laughing. I told his wife I was going to help her out, you know, get some reparations. And then he got mad. And I'm looking at him and laughed. I'm like, that's not even real. Like, you're not really mad, but after I knock you out, I'm gonna mush your son in the face. I'm gonna mush your kid, and then I'm gonna tell your wife that I knocked you out. Man, I didn't mush his kid, by the way. But he took that as something personal. And then after I knocked him out, the girl's father confronted me right after I hugged Rich. The girl's father, his wife's father, confronted me. Hey, I heard you was talking shit to my daughter. I said, look, sir. And I was being real polite. The 20-something-year-old me would have told old man, get the fuck out of my face, old man, if I kill you. But the older me now was like, look, sir, all I said was I was going to help your daughter out, get some reparations by beating up her husband, which is your son-in-law, which I'm pretty sure you probably wanted to kick the dude's ass at one point. The old man turned around and smiled and then walked off. He said, all right, you know what? You're right. And then walked away from me. That never happened.
You know, he can go back. Yeah, I told the guy off. You know, meanwhile, in his head, he's right. I agree with him. After Lee King, man, Lee King is over at Paradigm Training Center out of Texas.
Yep. That's
you
my
have
boy,
a draw with him on your record.
Yeah, we did. We fought to a draw. And I mean, it was a hell of a fight, bro. We went back and forth. He actually became one of my closest trainers when I was in Houston with Saul Solis. Lee was probably one of my main training partners as far as striking goes. I learned a lot of neat kickboxing tricks from this guy, bro. I mean, he was one of the most coolest, happiest, level-headed guys. But when it came to fighting, bro, he can fight.
You know what? You're probably stubborn because his stand-up was impeccable. If you look at his record, it's a little upside down and it's all ground. You wouldn't take him down.
Well, like I said, man, I was testing myself. You know, I knew I was great at wrestling. I knew I was good in judo. I wanted to be a striker. So because of me thinking this way, though, think about this. You know how long I fought in the UFC before they even labeled me as a wrestler? They like almost 8 years went by. They didn't know I was even a wrestler. Everybody was so caught up on my striking and all the knockouts and all the finishes. Nobody batted an eye to my real background of wrestling and judo. Nobody. Until I literally said it in an interview to someone. I was like, bro, I'm sitting here, I'm killing everything with my hands, but nobody know I'm a wrestler. Like I had to like make people know that I was a wrestler. Nobody knew I was a wrestler.
Why was it one of like the weakest part of your games? Like at least on paper.
Knocking people out is sell tickets. You know, I'm a showman. I like to show off. I like to, you know, I like to wow the crowd. You know, I like people to say, ooh, ah. Like I've always been that guy, even in wrestling, even in high school wrestling, you know, little league football. I was always that kid. Like I would shine everybody around me. And I knew if I had to leave a mark in the UFC, it had to be a mark that unmistakably, like everybody got to know that was my mark. That's like when they did the video game, and it was an honor and a pleasure to do that. I had a lot of fun. But when the game came out, I started realizing, well, people was realizing for me that it's hard to beat me in the game. So people, even overseas, was hitting me up. Man, this is bullshit. You know, it's like your character is unbeatable. I said, dude, they made the game really identifiable to your skill set. So if I fought somebody that was a good jiu-jitsu guy, like BJ Penn, right? If they took me down on a video game, more than likely, I probably, sometimes I got up maybe once, sometimes I never got up and I got tapped because I was losing fights in the UFC by submission, right? So they made that game pretty close to what the hell it was. And I'm not lying. I went through almost every player and realized, well, damn, they really did nail this game because everybody, like that, like they say, styles make fights. The game is the same way. So I had to like go out on a limb and just start telling people, look, man, if you want me to lose, fight a jiu-jitsu guy. More 9 times out of 10, if you get the takedown, you probably win. Bro, it's so funny, but people started doing it. And it's like, bro, this game is so fucking rigged. I'm like, no, it's not. It's set up for the same way we are in real life. Normally, when I fight jiu-jitsu guys, 9 times out of 10, I've been known to get submitted. So that's why the submission, you don't have to work that hard in a video game. It's weird, but it was fun, man.
So it's kind of like that Bo Jackson Tecmo Bowl.
Yes, thank you. You can run up the field and double back and circle all the way back around and run all the way back up the other side. Yes, it was just like that. Yeah, just like that.
Let's talk about your Laverne Clark fight. Reality Combat Fighting, September 25th, 2004.
On that show for Rich. That was Rich's show. It was cool, man. I thought I got the win. I think they called it a draw, but I felt like that was a win. I mean, I outworked this guy. I mean, we went back and forth. We was grappling, wrestling. We did everything, striking. But I felt like the whole time in that fight, I had the upper hand. When they called it a draw, I just felt like I got robbed. That was another Rich Clementi moment where I was pissed for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah. And he also missed weight as well. You had Kyle Bradley in your corner. It was nice. It was nice to see that. I had that on DVD. Santino DeFranco, November 20, 2004. 155-pound debut. This is a controversial fight.
Oh, was that the fight where they said, I don't remember that fight. I remember the name.
All right. So your manager didn't want you to go without him. So it's your first time cutting a 155, and he made you fly with him day of. I don't think you get off work or something. So you had same day weigh-ins on the biggest weight cut of your life.
Right. I remember that. So yeah, I was pretty pissed about that, but that's why I said, man, he wasn't a great manager. Like there was a lot of things about him that I wish if I wasn't so young, I would have knew better, but that wasn't the case. But in this situation, I mean, all the time I needed to cut weight, I was flying there. And I knew that was going to be a bad cut. I mean, it wasn't super bad, but I was still cutting weight up until weigh-in. Literally like hours before, not even weigh-ins, I'm sorry, hours before the match that day, because it was the day of the fight, because I literally was in New Orleans the night before, and then we got there. So yeah, the day of, I'm still cutting weight. And I think I got there, because I was wearing plastics all the way there, sweating all the way there. I think when I got there, I think I was on weight, but I was so dehydrated, so tired. But at that time, I was already wrestling at around 152, so I wasn't that big. But it still was a tiring cut. It didn't kill me, but I knew it was going to affect me in the ring. So when I'm fighting Santino, literally I go to lean up to strike him, and I catch Charlie horses everywhere. Like my muscles just start spazzing, and I had to lay back in his chest. Literally, I had to lay back down. I'll never forget that. I was so angry.
Yeah. You lost by triangle that fight. Georgia, the Georgia fight party had some amazing bouts. You also won a Muay Thai title against Ryan Madigan shortly after that, January 2005. He was from Griffin Raw, IKF East Coast champion. Melvin, people thought you were going there to get your ass whooped.
I mean, when was there not a time people thought I was going somewhere to get my ass whooped? I mean, that's what people was looking forward to at times.
You had Robert Emerson. He had Marco Huas in his corner. Remember that? February 19, 2005.
Yep, I remember that fight. Robert Emerson was another guy that had really good stand-up. But I mean, all these guys that they told me that had all this great stand-up, I ran into a few problems with a few fighters, but I always adjusted because I always made my style, like I always wanted my style to be explosive and just straightforward. But a lot of guys that they bragged like that were rumored about to be so great at stand-up, some of these guys was no match for me. And honestly, I'm not tooting my own horn, but I was a much harder hitter than most guys at my weight. So that I think gave me the big advantage because literally I was sparring with heavyweights. Everybody I sparred with was bigger than me. So it was all about power. Plus I was really into weights, lifting all the time. So I wanted to always be strong. Never did steroids a day in my life. So I was proud of that. Like as an athlete, I stayed away from it because I'm afraid of needles, by the way. But I was always afraid of it. So because I was afraid of it, I never tried it. But I always hear guys telling me how much better they felt, how strong they felt. But then I would see the downside to it when they're not using and then they just feel weak. So that right there always scared me away from it. It's like, if you're going to do it, you have to do it all the time. And there's no way in hell nowadays with the sports being clean, there's no way you get away with it now.
No. At FFC 14, they threw an 8-man tournament. Rob Braniff is one of my favorite promoters. March 5th, 2005. Daryl Smith from Animal House, the Bulldog. That's your first round opponent.
I think he broke his ankle.
You knocked him out in 307. He did break his
when
ankle.
I knocked him out, though, he broke his ankle. Like, literally, he fell over his ankle. I remember that.
Oof. Peter Kaljevic is your second round.
Yeah, that's the Russian guy, right? And then I fought Roger Werther in the finals.
That's right.
Yeah,
Kaljevic was a replacement for, I think, Mark Romano fell off, but they pulled some guy out of the locker room to fight you.
Right. I don't remember the alternate. I don't remember the alternate that well. I just knew he was foreign. But me and Roger Werther, prior to that, we had a sparring match that went viral on the internet.
This was that sparring match was before this?
Yeah, the sparring match was before this. Yes, sir. It was before this. Yep. So we already had it out for each other. Me and him, I always wanted to fight him in the UFC, especially when he was there for a little while. But that fight never happened. But man, he was just one of those guys that can bang, bro. Like he can dish it out, he could take it. So I mean, we was just slugging. And in that match, I remember like I switched over to my blue tights, took the shorts off. But I mean, we was just going at it, bro.
You switch your shorts in the middle of the fight.
No. If I'm not thinking right now, I'm lying. I fought the first round with the FFC shorts on. Because they had sponsored me some money. So I fought with the shorts on. And then at the end of the first round, I see Mr. Lee coaching him. I was like, hey, I gotta take these shorts off. I can't move. He's like, don't worry, take them off. So I took them off and I had my blue tights underneath them. My pseudo box tights.
That's cool. So it's Roger Huerta. Miguel, I bought the DVD. I still got the DVD at home. It's ruled a no contest.
Right.
Do you remember why?
Because the kid, well, I forget his name, Josh, whatever his name was, he was working my corner. So in between rounds, he's like massaging my shoulders and shit, right? So I'm not paying attention to anything. But from what I was told, and I think it was true, they said that he was like putting grease or something, lotion or something on my shoulders. So like I told them when I argued it as a no contest, I'm saying, look, I don't know what he's doing. I'm listening to my coach. I'm like, I got tunnel vision. I don't know what he's doing. You know what I mean? So, and I would never cheat to win. You know what I mean? I didn't need to. And then on top of that, in the Roger Werther fight, I was never in a submission danger position. Like, I don't even think we ever went to the ground like that to where he was trying to work a submission. So with all that being said, I'm like, okay, even if he did that, he should be fined for that, but not me. But I ended up getting fined for it. Yeah.
You know what's crazy? I think there's like a Muay Thai spray that people use on their shins.
I don't know what it was, bro. I didn't even know it was happening. My job was to pay attention to my coach, listen to my coach, because I knew Roger was a tough opponent. So it was like one of those matches where the first person to make a mistake is going to be the first one that's going to get cost with a loss. But we fought all the way to a decision. So, and I kind of expected that to happen because I knew it happened even in a sparring match. So when I found out that was happening, I was like, what? I was dumbfounded. But they tried to make it seem like I knew about it. I'm like, dude, I don't know. Like, he's behind me. I never at one time looked him in the face and saw him putting anything on me. He's just rubbing my shoulders. He had the ice pack, and he's just doing what a normal guy working your corner would do.
Yeah, it was all on video. That was the issue. Like,
I saw it later, and I was like, well, damn, okay. But if you notice on video, I never turned around and knew what the fuck was going on.
You got tunnel vision. You're focused.
Right.
You got tunnel vision. Yeah.
Right. But no matter how it plays out, cheating is cheating. And that was cheating. Like, you're not supposed to. So, I mean, that guy, I never worked with that guy again after that. We actually kicked him out of the gym.
What about working out with Mike Van Arsdale?
Coach Van Arsdale was cool, man. The Black Zillions team, it was a work in progress, man. But he was a legendary guy, man. Like, to learn some things from him, it was cool, man. Like I said, I'm a humble person. You know, guys that I know of that have fought, even if they didn't make it to where people expect them to make it, I know from experience of this, it's hard to fight day in and day out at that level. It's not easy. You know, by the time people see us on TV, all the hard work is done. Coach Van Arsdale, he was one of those guys that always kept that in perspective. You know, let's put the hard work in here, and it makes it that much easier out there when you're winning. So he was just one of those old school guys that he had that old school structure, and it worked.
And we'll close with this. What was it like working out with Justin Gaethje?
That's my dude, man. Fucking slug fests after slug fests. We ended up fighting each other in in Daytona, and I couldn't walk after that damn fight. I was so mad because I always knew about his little low ankle, low calf kick. But, you know, in practice, he didn't hit me that much with it, but he would kick me. In that fight, he must have kicked me in the calf so much. I was so mad, but I wouldn't let myself stay on the bench. I'm like, I got to finish this fight. Literally, after the third round, I can barely walk. So I couldn't even sit down. I had to stand up to keep pressure on it. Once the fight was over, the minute I sat down in the back, I couldn't even get up. They had to use a wheelchair to get me around that night. But Gaethje, pound for pound, is dynamically one of the best fighters. And it's crazy because his style is so ugly, but it works for him. But that's what I complimented, because I was the type of guy, I don't want to fight like everybody else. I want to stand out. I want to make sure my style looks completely different from everybody. Gaethje's that guy, you know what I mean? And he learns day in and day out, and he has some freaking cannons. He hits very hard. So, I mean, and when he throws to kill. He don't point fight, and I respect him for that, because that's the way I fight. I'm not trying to outscore you on a card and take it to a decision. I'm trying to finish the fight. Gaethje's a finisher, and that's what makes him dangerous in this sport.
Miguel?
Hey, so we've been all over the place. Thank you very much, Melvin. And I know we're going to come back, man. But I want to ask you, because I found it interesting that you like the smaller show feel. And, and a couple people, everybody likes that big glitz, but a couple people mentioned that. But how do you compare the big UFC show to the World Series of Fighting? Was it on the level, or did you?
No, it was UFC is a whole nother level. UFC and Bellator, to me, they're Bellator now, and the UFC now. The UFC I was in, those two shows are on the same dynamic. Bellator is always going to be in the UFC shadow. That's just what it is. UFC is the household name. They're like the dad. Bellator is the mother. You know what I mean? The dad's always going to be out front. But the Bellator company, they have the same level of respect, the same level of professionalism. They treated us great. Plus, most of the people that I was behind the scenes with in Bellator was previously behind the scenes with us in the UFC before they Zuffa started just wiping everybody out, like taking people's jobs. So it was like being at home in the UFC, because I was around the same people. Just different brand name, that's all.
And the World Series of Fighting felt a little rinky-dink?
Well, World Series of Fighting, man, I just never felt it was there. You know what I mean? I can go fight back home at a private show. I never had any interest in going to the World Series. It's just, that's where I landed, because I wasn't trying to get signed to a long deal. I wanted something short so that I can make it back to UFC. That was the intentions of that. But they put up some good fights, but I didn't think they were going to last just the way it was being run.
Yeah. Where are you working out at now?
Right now I'm at A1 Boxing, heavy hands boxing with Lamamba Serves. And then I go over to DCO MMA quite a little bit here and there, but they have more amateurs on the team. At this point, man, it's more, I'm trying to help give back, trying to help other fighters that looked up to me. It's weird when I go to a gym and a guy be like, man, I remember watching Ultimate Fighter and I was in middle school or elementary. And I'm like, cool kid, But I move around between 3 gyms right now, more focusing on my boxing because of bare knuckle. I just reached out to Dave 2 days ago. So I'm going to try to get on this October 1st card. This will be my first comeback fight since the Riggs fight. And it's going to be at 175. So I'm really looking forward to that. But I'm really looking forward to getting finishes. Like, me getting that MMA win the other week, 49-second knockout. It felt good to be back in the win column, but it felt good to see that I'm back to finishing fights. And I'm only getting stronger. So I got some plans for BKFC, man. I will win me another belt before I'm done.
Awesome. Melvin, true gentleman. Appreciate it. Nice seeing you again too, man. Been too long.
Man. Yeah, man. We'll talk soon.
Absolutely. Be good.
Oh, Mike, we got another deep dive in the books. Melvin Guillard, he said it a couple times in the interview that he's matured and stuff like that. And you always heard he was kind of like a wild cannon, like, throughout his days and stuff like that. And obviously, his ring entrances, his performance, and when he's on camera, he's a certain way. But man, he was charming, well-spoken, like revealing. Like he checked, Mike, he checked off a lot of boxes. I enjoyed the interview, man. He was great. And I root for him. I root for him.
I was kind of at a crossroads with it because I've known Melvin for several years, and the crossroad was high energy, ADHD Melvin Guillard that is just like a cannonball, kind of like an Antonio McKee, just spraying everywhere and just murking people. He was very mature, and I wasn't sure it's because he's still grasping the fact that his career is coming to an end, and it's hard for him because he doesn't know what the next chapter is. Rather than embrace it and wandering into deep water, he's a little scared. I mean, that's kind of where I got from it. But I mean, we never even touched his UFC career, and his UFC career is bonkers. It's bonkers.
Yeah, he's 50 Fight Club. That's a little moniker here at the podcast that we haven't used in a while. But he filled the bill for a 50 fight club member because he's been through it all. And like you said, we got to get him back to finish up the UFC stuff, and that's just going to be another couple hours. There's no two ways about it. The guy, he's a lifer at this sport. So my hat's off to Melvin, rooting for him, and hopefully he does a good close here for himself so that he goes out with the dignity he deserves.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, based on your comments, Melvin's a friend. I can get Melvin whenever we want. If you guys really like this interview and you want Melvin back to finish up to do his UFC career, which is just friggin' bonkers, we could absolutely do that. Up to you guys. Amped Martial Arts, you're commenting a lot. Jason Maxwell fan, thank you. It's people like you that help us grow.
Yeah, see some new people. We got Vegan Hitler, Genghis Conrad, our old crew of people. And I think there's a new guy out there, DeVry's Town. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, DeVry. But he's checking out the old podcast and he's liking the real old school stuff. So I'm not revealing anything, but Mike's got one just for you old school guys in the books, and I got to take my hat off to the MMA detective. He tracked down a real old school guy.
Well, we got to record it. And I think you try not to set a bar too crazy high, but if the information that we can get out of this guy is done in a manner that is palatable, this might equal the Scott Basak interview with the Lion's Den tell-all, which is quickly becoming our top downloaded, episode. Like it's jumping up there. So Miguel, we got to get it in the books, but I've got a contact and a confirmation.
Yeah, and if not, we'll crap on him here at the end when no one listens. We'll be like, hey, he never showed up or whatever. But
Jason DeLucia, we never liked him, but it may or may not be him.
Yeah, no, he used the crane kick. So all right, brothers. We got Melvin Guillard in the books.
Check out the full interview on iTunes, Spotify, and all major podcast platforms.